Heal Me by Embracing Cedric on AO3. Chapter 2. Walking Izuku through UA High School campus was like walking a kid through a candy shop and expecting them to keep moving forward. He already had a natural curiosity that had been with him since birth, but being raised on Island amongst aspiring researchers and scientists had only further cemented that desire for new information. Recovery Girl practically had to drag him from the department studio, and enhancing sound of machinery only managing to tear him away from the promise that they'll be back to see it later, so he could be introduced to Power Loader and his students. By the time they reached the principal's office, he already filled multiple pages in his notebook he'd kept on him with questions he wanted to ask when they looped back around. Midoriya, Principal Nezu greeted as the trio entered the office. I hope your first impression of UA have continued to be positive since I met with you this morning. Yes, thank you. Izuku slipped the notebook back into one of his pockets of his coat lab. Your students and staff have been all very welcoming. One of them tackled you to the ground. Recovery Girl reminded him, still worried about her intern being attacked so suddenly. She raised her cane and propped at the grass stains on his lab coat, causing Izuku to blush. That was just Kachan. He was excited to see me, he assured his mentor. Though all seeing Nezu's expression, he explained the situation fully. I'm childhood friends with one of your students, Bakugou Katsuki? Ah, yes, the one with the explosion quirk, Nezu said, as the name sparked familiarity. He frowned, recalling more and more information about the student in question. Are you sure you're all right? Absolutely. We haven't seen each other in person for a while, Izuku shrugged. Honestly, I would have been concerned if he didn't tackle me like that. Well, if you're sure you're fine, I suppose we could move forward with the reason you're here, Nezu gestured towards the other person in the room. I believe you already met with Mr. Sasaki. A tall, lean figure dressed in business straightened in his seat at one of the office's couches. Izuku hadn't seen the man in years. While their first meeting had been filled with shout and distrust, he couldn't deny how happy he was to see Sir Nighteye again. The pro hero often forth and intimidate in front, but Izuku had learned to read past the calculated gaze. It's good to see you again, sir. Izuku spoke sincerely, earning himself a rare smile from the older man. You as well, Midoriya. Sir Nighteye returned the sentiment before waving a hand towards the uninformed figure standing behind him. Allow me to introduce the newest member of my agency, Mirio Toogata. It's an honor to meet you, Lemillion. Oh, please, call me Toogata, the hero told him with a grin, reaching out for a handshake. Izuku found himself smiling in a response, fond of the way Toogata's smile shined as bright as All Might's. So you're the student from Island with a healing quirk, huh? I've heard a lot about you from All Might and Sir. All good things, I assure you, All Might promised, as he took a seat on one of the other cushions in the room. Everyone else followed suit, finding seats as Nezu began preparing tea. It's a shame you didn't attend school here, Toogata pointed out. We could have met so much sooner. I actually used to want to attend UA when I was younger. Katsuki and I both dreamed of attending the same school as All Might, Izuku told him, nodding in thanks as he accepted the cup of tea Nezu offered him. But when my quirk manifested, the doctor who evaluated me put me in contact with Island. Apparently they were always searching for quirks like mine to research. They offered scholarships and spendants that I couldn't really turn down. While the choice had been practically and obvious benefited Izuku greatly in the long run, it still hadn't been easy. It was difficult separating from Katsuki, and it didn't help that the other boy threw the biggest tantrum when it was time for Izuku to leave. If that wasn't enough, Katsuki began to act out at school without Izuku there as a buffer and moral compass. It was hard on both of them, but the decision had ultimately been a good one. That's how you met All Might, isn't it? Toogata asked. You worked under his friend Dave Shield. That's right, Izuku confirmed, glancing over at All Might. Misa and Uncle Dave sent their love, by the way. I'm sure he's quite sulked that we stole one of his most promising pupils, All Might mused, with a chuckle and a shake of his head. Dave was especially interested in Midoriya and his quirk, admittedly for fairly selfish reasons in the beginning. He hoped I'd be able to heal All Might's injuries, Izuku explained, catching Toogata up to speed on the story everyone else in the room already knew. But Recovery Girl already tried, Toogata acknowledged, his brows furrowing. I thought the extent of the damage was too much. The drawbacks of my quirks is that it's limited by the life energy that the patient is able to give to fuel the acceleration healing process, Recovery Girl clarified. If I tried to heal a large enough injury, it could easily kill the patient. With mine, the energy comes from me, Izuku supplied. So it's limited by you? Togata pieced together, slowly nodding his head. Then do you think that if you tried to heal him, that it might end up killing you? Oh, I already tried it, Izuku corrected him, lifting up the bottom of the edge of the skirt to reveal his torso. And it did nearly kill me. Toogata sucked in a breath, words catching in his throat as Izuku revealed a large scar covering the majority of his left chest. The surface tissue seemed relatively healthy, and there was a slight deficit in muscle mass compared to his right side. But Toogata could not determine what sort of injury could have caused such a scar pattern. All he knew was that it looked strangely familiar to him. He attempted it when he was only 13, All Might lamented, sullen eyes filled with regret. Scarred like that at such a young age. It's not your fault. It was my decision to try, Izuku softly snapped, tugging his shirt back down. He turned back to Toogata to give further clarification. When I heal someone, the energy doesn't just drain equally from every part of my body. It tends to drain mostly from the same area as the energy on the patient. If I healed someone with a broken arm, then mine would feel weak and sore after. So when you tried to heal All Might's injuries, Toogata trailed off, piecing together why Izuku's scar pattern looked so familiar. It was like a less caved-in version of All Might's injuries. I couldn't even fix it partially. There was just too much. Izuku shook his head, eyes glowing distant as he thought back to the day of the attempt. It was like trying to fix the top of a tower that was crumbling at its base. You try to patch up the damage as best as you can, but if the foundation isn't fixed, then all your work just gets undone. Thinking back, he had experienced a whirlwind of emotions that day. First, there had been the excitement when Dave Shields introduced him to the hero whom he admired for so many years. Then came the shock and worry when All Might revealed his true form, and he saw the extensive injuries plagued the symbol of peace. They had explained the situation, and Shield had explained his plan for Izuku to use his quirk. All Might had been adamantly against it, but was shut down by Izuku's new emotion, determination. After that came the excitement when he began to use his quirk, and it looked as though his plan could work. Then came the excruciating pain and agony as All Might's injuries became his own. Then there had been only darkness. Midoriya was desperate to try again even after what it did to him the first time, All Might recalled. He had been so fearful that the boy's determination would be the death of him that he did something he never thought he'd do. He had called his former sidekick. At first, Sir Nighteye had been all in favor of Izuku trying again. All he had been told was that on Island, one of the David's Shield's apprentices had a healing quirk that they believed would be their solution to All Might's injuries. He quickly changed his tune once he arrived and got one look at the desperate, wounded child who had just awoken after being unconscious for days because of the first attempt. I looked ahead and saw that trying again would not only certainly kill him, it also wouldn't be enough to heal the injuries. Sir Nighteye jumped in to share his part of the story. He raised an eyebrow as he looked at Izuku, who now seemed to be sulking in his seat. At the time, you yelled at me for looking at your future. I was honestly a bit impressed. It's not every day you get chewed out by an adolescent child. After you told people what you saw, I was put in lockdown to make sure I wouldn't try it again in secret. Izuku spoke in his defense. I always believed that the futures you saw could be changed. At that remark, Toogata and Sir Nighteye shared a glance between them. It was subtle, and those less of perspective eye would have missed it. However, Izuku was nothing if not perspective, and he sent Sir Nighteye an unimpressed look over the rim of his cup as he took a sip of tea. Sir Nighteye sighed, fully aware that not much could get past the young healer. As it turns out, I managed to prove you right, Sir Nighteye confessed. Izuku's eyes widened as he choked slightly on his tea. What do you mean? He asked, anxiety building. What happened? As you know, during last year's raid on the Hitachi, I was hit by Overhaul's quirk destroying drug and subsequently lost my quirk entirely. Sir Nighteye began. Right? Izuku had been devastated by the news and was even made more upset by the look of rare roguery on Sir Night's face when the hero had relayed the news over a video message. He had maintained a confident appearance for the media and news outlets, but in private video he seemed almost scared. His foresight had been such a crucial tool for his hero industry, so it lost him in a state that he'd never really faced before, one where he had no way of knowing what was going to happen. The bullet that hit me was meant for Toogata, who was protecting the young girl, Eri. Izuku took note of the sight flinch from Toogata as Sir Nighteye continued. I had looked ahead and seen that the bullet hit him, but I still desperately jumped in front of it. Why didn't you tell me about this? Izuku questioned, mind racing at the new piece of information. Your predictions have always been 100% correct, even when you've tried to intervene. They have been, Sir Nighteye agreed, just as baffled. I'm not sure why this one was different from the rest, but here we are. The room fell silent and contemplative. Izuku slowly pulled down his tea and pulled out his notebook, murmuring under his breath as he flipped through a new page and began writing. His gaze was distant, mind reeling with those theories and speculations. He was only brought back to the present by the sound of Toogata speaking with a broken, tired voice. You should have never... Don't start that, Mirio. Sir Nighteye cut him off. What would we have done if he lost all for one? Losing my quirk after years in the field is simply a small price to pay to protect the future symbol of peace. Izuku sympathized with Toogata. It must have been hard to see his mentor lose his quirk, and there was no doubt that Toogata felt some level of guilt over it happening. However, Sir Nighteye was right. Izuku remembered reading the news reports and watching out-of-focus videos uploaded by bystanders who had witnessed the fight. Lemillion had taken on Overhaul alone, and without his nearly 3 years of training with All For One, he would have lost that fight. The girl you told me about, Eri, Izuku marked, a new line in his notes. I assume you considered trying using her to rewind your quirk and restore your own. We have considered it, Sir Nighteye concealed. However, her quirk is incredibly volatile, and if used improperly, could rewind a person to a point where they didn't even exist. She needs training, which is difficult considering her quirk can only be used on people and not objects. Understood. Izuku softly tapped his notebook and added notes. Would it be possible me to see her at one point? I believe that could be arranged. It was Principal Nezuko who answered him this time. One of our teachers, Shouta Aizawa, currently has custody of her. His eraser quirk is useful to stop hers if she were to ever lose control. Izuku slipped the note back into his coat before reaching into one of his other pockets of sweets. He hadn't been using his quirk for an unfortunate side effect of simply possessing it was abnormally fast metabolism, almost like he was stockpiling healing while others are on standby. He raised the candy to his mouth, stopping when he realized Toogata was looking at him. His previous look of guilt shifted to one of complaintment. Izuku lowered the candy. Toogata? Sorry, Toogata seemed a bit... likely not realizing that he had been staring in the first place. I don't mean to offend, but why was Midoriya told about All For One? It's not something you should have needed to reveal for him to try and heal All Might's injuries. I may be called the youthful heroine, but I won't be around forever, Recovery Girl answered. Someone needs to look after Yagasi's idiot successor, and potentially even whenever Toogata decides to pass the quirk along. I only hurt myself with All For One in the beginning, Toogata argued, holding his hands up in the air, flexing as if to help prove his point. I'm used to it now. You're used to the quirk, or you're used to the pain, Izuku chucked, knowingly, fully popping the candy into his mouth as he watched Toogata's eyes widen. You're clever, and your original permissional quirk is helpful for negating the distraction caused by All For One, but from what I've heard, the damage you've already done to your arms is stupidly extensive, and not something we could ignore. Oh, and he'll do just fine, Principal Nezu murmured, as he watched the exchange with increased amusement. It's good to have a few people on your side who know the full story, All Might offered, sending Toogata a sympathetic look. Once Izuku had gotten over his initial awe from meeting his idol, his praise, he had quickly turned to vile criticism on All Might's life choices and habits. He knew what it was like to be on the receiving end of Izuku's shrewd comments. Think of me as a resource, Izuku offered, tossing a candy at Toogata, who snatched it from the air with a curious smile. One you can certainly trust. It's been hard keeping the secret from the people I love, but I understand the importance of it. I even would have kept All Might's injuries a secret if they hadn't left me bedridden for a while. Your mother was not a fan of me for a while after that, All Might recalled, wincing a bit as he thought of Hinko Midoriya's maternal wrath. However, something I wasn't expecting was how much young Bakugou seemed to both admire and despise me as we began UA. Onmei had a complicated relationship with Bakugou. He had saved the boy from a sludge villain a few years prior, throwing all he had left before hitting his limit into freeing the suffocating student, only to later learn that the middle schooler he had saved was Izuku's dear childhood friend. However, being a fan and even being saved by a villain by him wasn't enough for Bakugou to completely forgive the man for nearly killing Izuku. What can I say? Izuku popped another candy into his mouth, a sly grin creeping in his corners. He's protective. I love Izuku being brutally honest. That whole, oh, you're so cool, but this is exactly what you're doing wrong, and this is why you're a dumbass for it. Love it. Absolutely live for it. We'll eat it up. During half of recording this, my brother has been sitting here. Say hi.
I think I broke it.
What do you mean you broke it?
I don't know. This just happened.
Let me see. Dude, I gotta pause the recording now. We're back. He did not break whatever he was doing. In fact, he actually did the right thing. I don't know why he thought he broke it. Anyways.
It's just such a common occurrence.
Words are not wording. Shut up. Okay.
You shut up.
Back to my notes. Since he was here, I have a lot of funny bloopers that I'm now gonna put in the following couple seconds. You're making me think I have dyslexia.
My friends constantly wonder that about me all the time.
Is it just like heterodory?
What?
Is it heterodory?
Do you mean hereditary?
Yeah, that word.
I don't know. I think it might be.
Dude, what if it is?
What if mom has dyslexic?
What if mom has dyslexic? Does that word, sentence make sense?
I said, what if mom is dyslexic?
Oh shit, I can't hear. Oh shit, it's recording! And that was bloopers with my brother.
Hello.
Anyways, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds, have a wonderful day or night, and thank you so much for watching.
Bye.